in order to make an example out of the people who are responsible for this.
Is it an act of war in your mind?
I don't know that I want to use those words. I think the president is the one that has to respond, and I think what he has to know is that all of us in New York support him and support him completely in the efforts that he's going to have to make over the next couple of days, week, and to make a point that people can't do this. You can't attack innocent men, women, and children. And ultimately, I'm totally confident that American democracy and the American rule of law will prevail. And the people of New York are going to help to demonstrate that over the next couple of days.
Anybody take responsibility for this? Any group take responsibility at this time? And what is the city doing to safeguard the citizens now that something like this happens?
Well, first of all, I don't know of anyone that's taken responsibility for it at this time. And secondly, the New York City Police Department is fully deployed, not just in the rescue effort, but all throughout the city of New York, offering as much protection and as much security as we're capable of for the citizens of the city. And at this point, I believe that the people in New York City can demonstrate our resolve and our support for all of the people that were viciously attacked today by going about their lives and showing everyone that vicious, cowardly terrorists can't stop us from being a free country and a place that functions. And we'll do everything we can to make that point.
Jennifer Steinhauer, please.
Just a housekeeping thing. Can you tell us what's going to happen to the New York primary?
This morning I issued an order suspending the primary across the state. There will be no primary today, and we'll reschedule it once we get through this.
Jennifer,
Mayor,
please.
can you please walk us through the municipal services right now, what's going on with the subways and the schools, the courts?
The subway, the schools, the Chancellor, I commend the Chancellor. He was on the phone a number of times with us. He coordinated very, very carefully what would happen. He thought it out, and he came up with a very good plan, which was essentially to keep the schools open, to keep the children in school, so we didn't have a large number of children in the different boroughs that would be released from school. They're being released, I shouldn't say as normal, but basically on the normal schedule. If parents aren't there to pick up the young children, then the children will be taken to a center, and the parents will be notified to come and pick them up. The children who have Metro cards, who normally travel on the subway, will be able to do that. The subways are functioning in 4 of the 5 boroughs, and can we get an update, Joe, on how the subway is doing in Manhattan?
All the lettered lines are working.
And in Manhattan?
In Manhattan lines, all the lettered lines.
All the lettered lines are working, including in Manhattan. And throughout the rest of the city, public transportation is normal. So the children should be able to return from school in the normal fashion. And if any children don't have parents to pick them up, then we'll hold them, let the parents know, and then the parents can come and pick them up.
Mr. Mayor, you mentioned you were on Barclay Street. What's the radius of damage that's been affected? How many other side streets around the world?
I don't think we know yet. The whole area of Lower Manhattan has been very much affected by it.
How many police
and fire are involved? Like how many all NYPD off-duty officers as they come in? Or like
all NYPD and FDNY officers are on duty now. And we're going to need all of them, and again, thanks to the governor and the way in which the state reacted, we will have 1,600 National Guard to relieve them over a period of time, so we can get some relief for them.
If anybody's looking for someone that may have been in the World Trade Center or in and around that area, what should they do? How can they do it?
We're going to give you numbers so that we can try to help coordinate that. Individual businesses have already done that, but we will as soon as we can find some time from the relief efforts, give you a number in which people can call, and then we can direct them to the right place.
The National Guard looting or anything like that? Any lawlessness?
There have been no reports of lawlessness.
The governor of New York State, Governor George Pataki, the mayor, Mayor Giuliani, between him, the police commissioner just over on the right side of the picture there, the fire commissioner, the police commissioner more than anybody else being almost a restraining influence there, trying to say both to the governor and to the mayor, be careful what you say here. We don't have information on this, that, and the other thing. And on this question of casualties, it is the mayor who is attested to what everybody's got going, rushing around in their minds at the moment. More casualties, more than anyone can bear, but not willing to make perfect sense, not willing at this point to put a number on the people who they believe have been killed and or injured. The mayor did say that in one of the parks in the lower part of Manhattan, 1,500 people were regarded as walking wounded. They were aware of 600 people in local hospitals, and New York City has 170 hospitals, and as the mayor said, Every one of them is available under these circumstances. And there are 150 critical conditions which were medevaced out or taken out under other circumstances, some of them going across the river to New Jersey. And in one case, according to the Canadian television network, saying had been airlifted as far away as Canada in order to get special medical care. Canada has several very strong centers in burn treatment, so it may be one of the reasons that patients have gone up that far. The mayor returning again to this thing which has clearly moved him, I think, more than anything else today, getting down there and seeing the two trade towers before they collapsed on themselves, and seeing the fires burning up high, and he said it every time, and seeing the people jumping from the top of the trade towers, driven to their deaths by the encroaching fire in the rooms in which they no longer felt they were particularly safe. And Governor Pataki, I think the first person today to say in the clearest language there's got to be a retaliation. Lots of people said, if you find out who has done this, you've got to be held accountable. Mayor being reluctant to say whether or not the country was in a state of war, which is a technical thing, I think, for him in many ways. But that's pretty much, I think, the summary of the highlights of their news conference, in which there seems to be a real coordination between the local and the state and the federal. And we have here with us a man who should know whether or not it's working, Jerry Hauer, who's the former head of New York City Mayor's Office of Emergency Management, and the last time I saw you was in that place on the west side of Manhattan, which you had designed for just an event, or maybe an event not just like this.
Yeah, this certainly is an incredible event, Peter. I don't think in our wildest imagination you could think about a day where simultaneous attacks, you know, we all think about it, we plan for it, but to have something like this occur is certainly, I view it as an attack on our nation.
But was it? I understand your emotional state. I'd like
Sure.
Everybody's the same. I think we're all the same.
Sure.
Did you never consider that this was a possibility?
Well, we consider, and as we plan for New York City, we plan for massive events. In point of fact, one of the things that we did when I was still heading up OEM was we put in place memorandums of understanding with New Jersey, with Connecticut, Nassau, Suffolk County, to ensure that there was enough medical care available, that we had ambulances, police, firefighters, because we had to plan for horrific types of events. And as I told you when you were down, we planned for various types of incidents, chemical and biological types of attacks, for explosive types of attacks. You know, this is clearly just a devastating type of an incident here in the city.
The Office of Emergency Management that bunker, it's a pretty elegant bunker, and nor is it underground. It was second and third floors, right. I think. That's out of operation at the moment.
Yeah, my understanding is...
That's something you never planned for.
Yeah, well, in fact, we did. The alternate was to go to police headquarters or to another location in the event that the command center was inactivated for some reason or rendered useless. Do you know what has happened to it today? Do you know precisely what's happened to it? I talked to some folks down there, and my understanding is that a lot of the debris has fallen and has blocked the access to the building. I've heard some reports that they're concerned about the structural stability of the building, but I have not been able to confirm that. But as part of our plan, there were backups. You always have backups in your planning, and that's what the city is doing today.
Now, you've had to walk to get here today, and that's perfectly understandable. We're on the west side of Manhattan, and things are that difficult. But do you have a sense of how it's going? And we've heard the mayor's appraisal, and accepted as an honest one. Do you have any sense of how the system's working, and do you have any sense of how many people are still trapped or dead?
Well, first of all, I think that things are working as they should. I think that, you know, when you've got the best police and fire department anywhere in the world, They are doing everything to try and rescue people, to try and get near the building. But you've got to also realize the dynamics in a situation like this change a bit when you have a number of police and firefighters injured as well.
Sure.
And that's what we saw this morning. I was listening to the fire radio this morning when the building collapsed, and they were screaming for help because firefighters were trapped. So the emotion changes a bit, but these are extremely professional people. These are very heroic people. They will do everything they can to try and get in and rescue anybody that could potentially be alive in that building, recognizing that there is a potential for additional collapse.
What about the prospect, as the governor's announced, of the National Guard being called into New York for an act of terrorism? Is this anything you ever envisioned, and what will they do?
Well, in fact, that's the question, John, what they'll do. I would imagine that they will help support the police department, the fire department, provide logistical support, manpower, help with search and rescue. Whether or not they'll be used for law enforcement purposes, traffic control, things like that, I think I've not been privy to those discussions, so I don't know. But that's certainly possible.
Leading up to the millennium, you personally designed a series of exercises where a disaster would unfold and they would respond to it, a tabletop exercise, a field exercise, and then another disaster, and then another, to make it more and more difficult to stretch the resources to the limit. Was that worst-case scenario design that you put together to see if the city could handle such a momentous disaster anything close to this, or have a component like this?
Yeah, you know, as we were planning for the millennium, we were planning for millions of people in Times Square and for the potential of something happening there. And we had to look at where all those resources would come from.
So did you have, in your design, did you have a truck bomb go off and then something else happen?
We had a sequence of events, both explosions, chemicals, biological incidents, and we looked at various types of terrorist events. And, you know, I think that what you're seeing here today is the result of having the New York City Fire Department, New York City Police Department well prepared. But again, I don't care where you are, anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world.
You're not prepared for this.
An incident like this is difficult and certainly stresses any system anywhere in the world. And then when you have a number of injuries to police and firefighters, it really does change the dynamics.
Did you ever imagine in your various scenarios that a building, not to mention two separate buildings basically in case of the trade towers, would collapse on one another?
We did plan for building collapse, for bombings, and that was part of our routine planning.
Is there some hint there of what the operation now faces in terms of what you went through?
Well, what happens from here on out is a very slow process because first of all you've got to put the fire out, and my understanding is there's gas lines feeding the fire, and it is not out. So before you can really start doing a search and rescue in the middle of the building or even recovering those victims, you've got to get that fire out.
Yeah. The mayor did just say a moment ago the gas has been turned off in city buildings. That would seem to be to have alleviated one very pressing problem for much of the morning.
Yes, but we still see that it's burning. We see that it continues to burn, and you can do some search and rescue around the periphery of what's burning, but to actually get into the area that's burning, this is going to be a long-term process.
John?
Now, you mentioned something about continuity of government, contingency plans. What are we seeing in New York and in Washington where the officials are not, where we're accustomed to seeing them, not in the White House, not operating out of City Hall? Have they gone to ground?
You have to in a situation like this, when you view that the country has been attacked. You have to have alternative sites for the mayor, for the governor to operate from, to continue government.
On the assumption that their regular sites are potential targets?
Oh, sure. You have to do that. And I would imagine that's what's happening in Washington as well.
Good afternoon. This is Maureen Bunyan in the ABC 7 newsroom. You are looking at a live picture of the Pentagon, which is still on fire. There apparently is smoke coming out. Obviously is smoke coming out. We assume it is still on fire, with officials trying to get that blaze contained since this morning's terrorist attack on the building.
It has now been 5 hours since that terrorist attack, since a plane slammed into the Pentagon. This was the scene at approximately 10 o'clock this morning when that plane struck the Pentagon. It penetrated the outer wall and then made its way into the inner corridor at the Pentagon. As you might imagine, at that moment, all people were told to evacuate the Pentagon, which they did. The rescue efforts have been underway now since then. We have some video now of the people that are being evacuated, both medically and otherwise. We are not receiving detailed information at this point as to just what the full numbers are, just what the full damage was. We know that the Pentagon itself staffs 20,000 people. No idea at this point just how many people may have been inside at the time.
And Del, here's the situation in the skies over the United States at this moment. The Federal Aviation FAA says that all of commercial aircraft flights have now reached their destinations. No additional takeoffs are being allowed in the aftermath of today's attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. And the FAA also says that no troubles have been reported with any more flights across the United States.
And obviously there are those in our area that are trying to get information about loved ones who may have been on those flights. The American Airlines information number is there on your screen. It is 1-800-245-0999. And also it is believed that 2 of the flights may have been United Airlines flights. 1-800-932-8555 is the number you can call for United Airlines information, and we will keep putting those up for you throughout the afternoon.
And also here in the district has been declared a state of emergency. The mayor made that declaration earlier this afternoon at a press conference. Here's some of what he had to say then.
Again, we're declaring a state of emergency in order to put everyone on alert, in order to ensure that we have the highest level of preparedness. Obviously, if something were to happen, God forbid, and we pray that it won't, we will be fully prepared to then execute the necessary contingency plans.
And the mayor says he will have further news conferences this afternoon at 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock to bring us up to date on the situation in the district.
We also need to update you right now to the extent of the state of emergency in the district as to what you can and you can't do. There are several road closings that we need to tell you about. Route 50, 66, 29, and the GW Parkway are all closed inbound from Virginia. They are open only for medical personnel. Once again, inbound into the district. Routes 50, 66, 29, and the GW Parkway are all closed inbound. Route 1 is also closed outbound from D.C., and Route 395 northbound, we are told, which is outbound, is also closed.
And Del, some more traffic information for you folks. VRE says it now has very limited service this afternoon. MARC train service remains suspended. It is running buses at some of the stations, and the buses are not on any schedule, but the train service is suspended.
And we want to reiterate that this has been a two-pronged terrorist attack. Of course, the worse and more severe attack happening in New York City, and then there is the attack on the Pentagon itself. We are coordinating our efforts with ABC News to bring you the most information that we possibly can. We're going to return to ABC News and Peter Jennings right now.
Of the White House. John McCarthy, who covers the Pentagon, national security, and a good deal of terrorism and international intelligence issues for us, is at the Pentagon. John, what have you got?
A whole plate full of things, Peter. First of all, we've been talking throughout the day about possible ship movements, American ship movements. It is true that 2 aircraft carriers, 5 other combatants, and a hospital ship are now all heading north along the Atlantic seaboard toward New York. No decision has yet been made about exactly what to do with those ships when they get there, but of course aircraft carriers have a very large hospital capability, so they could be used for that. I think it is a responsive measure. Defense Secretary Rumsfeld, after the attack on the Pentagon, went immediately to the gash that you see behind me here when the very first destruction was detected and helped pull some people out of the rubble. He is now in what is called the National Military Command Center in the Pentagon, and he intends to stay there indefinitely until all forces around the world have been secured. All forces around the globe at this point are at ThreatCon Delta, which is the highest level of threat condition that American troops can be in. One of the difficulties with the fire and the rescue effort here in the Pentagon, Peter, is we have seen continuous outbreaks of fires within the different levels of the Pentagon, and it has been extremely difficult for search and rescue people to get inside the Pentagon. It was 5 hours before the first people were able to get into some of the rubble to try to begin to pull out people who may have been trapped. The fire in the Pentagon was described as an inferno by those people who were in some of the worst areas. The evacuation in parts of the Pentagon was very orderly. Some of it was complete chaos, as you might expect.
Okay, John, thanks very much. John McCarthy at the Pentagon. We just take a quick look at John there. Jackie, there for a second? I want to put John on camera for a second because earlier today you described, you just turn around and take a look at that gash in the Pentagon there and describe again for us. You think it's what, 200 feet wide, 200 to 300 feet wide?
It is at least 200 or 300 feet wide, Peter. Just imagine a very large commercial aircraft ramming into this space. The Pentagon is built like a blockhouse, as you know, during World War II. It is a very substantial building, and this aircraft, traveling at between 150 and 200 miles an hour, penetrated deeply into the rings of the Pentagon, almost to the center. The destruction on the 5 floors that are above ground is considerable. One of the admirals was briefing us earlier that he felt that the section that was hit was one of the areas that was being repaired. We now believe that is not true. It is an area that was very fully staffed, primarily with Navy and Marine Corps personnel, but also the Defense Intelligence Agency.
Okay, thanks very much, John McCarthy at the Pentagon. We'll come back to you. On the phone with us at the moment is the former CIA Director, James Woolsey. Mr. Woolsey, there's so much to ask you about at a moment like this in terms of your experience, but as our political director, or actually that's not true, as a former senior White House official said a short while ago to one of us, there's going to be a hellacious amount of finger-pointing at the moment. What's gone wrong here?
Well, one thing that's gone wrong, Peter, I think, is that for some years now, we have adopted a theory that terrorism first was likely just to be sort of a pickup team, these loose associations of terrorists inspired, say, by the Blind Sheikh in New York. This was the thought in the 2 bombings, one attempted, one real in New York back in the early 90s. And then the Clinton administration veered off into saying everything looked like it might be Osama bin Laden. It's important that we realize there is a real possibility when you have something this devastating and well coordinated that there could be state action of some sort behind it. Now, I don't know that that's the case, and I won't say that it's the case, but there is at least a plausible case that there was Iraqi government involvement in the World Trade Center bombing back in 1993. This all has to do with the identity, the true identity of Ramzi Youssef, who was the mastermind who's in prison out in Colorado now. At his sentencing, the judge said, "We still don't really know who you are." And if there was a chance that there was Iraqi government involvement in that, since Youssef was the mastermind of the World Trade Center and of a bombing plot in the Pacific, which he was working on when he was caught, to have a lot of American airlines in the Pacific blown up. What happened today is a sort of amalgam of the earlier 2 Ramzi Youssef plots. It's at least, I think, interesting that that's the case, and if some of the observers, Laurie Milroy and others, are correct, that there's a reasonable chance that he was, in fact, involved with the Iraqi government, there could also be a chance that the Iraqi government is involved here, even if bin Laden or other terrorist groups are as well.
Can I just ask you just a couple of really elementary questions about intelligence? You've just done something on the air which strikes me as what intelligence officers do when they sit down to try to figure out what the heck is going on. Is that in fact, what you're trying to do at the moment? You called it an amalgam of 2 plots. Is that how it works at the moment?
Well, this is nothing but circumstantial evidence that I've been talking about, but it's interesting circumstantial information anyway. And yes, that's the sort of thing that I think intelligence officers need to do. Part of the problem with the World Trade Center bombing back in '93 is that most of the information about it was under grand jury secrecy until the trial, and after that, not many people paid attention to it. So even most of the federal government had no access to it except outside the FBI and parts of justice.
Now, you mentioned governments and individual organizations or operations. Don't governments traditionally leak information more than independent or semi-independent terrorist cells? If there were a government involved, is it not inconceivable that the United States didn't pick up something?
I think it's possible that a government could be involved and not be picked up, especially if it was operating very carefully, as the Iraqis or conceivably the Iranians might under these circumstances. It is normally somewhat easier to learn what's going on inside a government than a terrorist group, particularly one that doesn't use many communications and the like, and does everything within just a very small number of people. But it's not impossible that terrorist groups could work together with a government. The Iraqi government has been quite closely involved with a number of the Sunni terrorist groups, and on some matters has had contact with bin Laden. So,
I'm sorry, Mr. Woolsey, I think I just lost you.
I said on some matters.
Lost at the moment, and I hope we'll get him back on the telephone. The former director of the CIA, James Woolsey, on the phone, agreeing that there's going to be a heck of a lot of finger-pointing at the FBI, at the Department of Defense, and at the CIA. No, I have my FB, thank you very much. I just lost the director of the CIA. Okay, thank you very much. Because, as this former official in the White House points out, people are going to demand massive retaliation. Mr. Woolsey raises two quite fascinating possibilities. One, that there is a terrorist organization or group involved with a government, that there is, as there has been believed in the past, a terrorist operation within the Iranian political establishment, which perhaps even other parts of the Iranian political establishment didn't know about. And similarly true, though much likely, for them to be operating in ignorance of Saddam Hussein inside Iraq as well. But the reason that, and I bring John Miller back briefly in on this again, the reason he suggests an amalgam, Mr. Woolsey does, of two footprints is because of the potential, never perfectly proved, that Ramzi Youssef, who has been on trial and convicted of the first trade tower attack, did seem to have some tenuous connection with Iraq.
And that this is a mixture of the two plots that were his two big capers. One, the plot to blow up numerous airlines on the Pacific route targeting American tourists. The other to blow up the World Trade Center. Here, planes, American carriers have been used to attack the World Trade Center.
Okay, I apologize.
No, as Mr. Woolsey pointed out, the difficulty with Ramzi Youssef and really getting to the bottom of the World Trade Center was, while he escaped as the mastermind and while he was captured in a guest house funded by bin Laden, nobody ever knew who sent him in the first place, or what his real nationality was, or even what his real name was, which set him apart from all the other people connected with those cases. Truly a mystery man, still in prison here in America.
As somebody said a little while ago, too, in terms of everything we're looking at now, suspects, there's no good options on the table in this regard whatsoever. Let's try to keep up with the running developments of the day. Lisa Stark is with us from Seattle. She covers aviation for us. And Lisa, when we last commented on the status of this plane, we have at least one, I beg your pardon, at least two of them in the process of being hijacked.
Right, Peter. Here's the latest information we know right now. We know, obviously, the two American planes were lost. Flight 11 from Boston to L.A. That is one of the planes that went into the World Trade Tower. Flight 77 from Dulles to Los Angeles. We believe that that may have been the plane that went into the Pentagon. The two United planes, United 93, that is the plane that crashed south of Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And now United 175, that plane, the plane from Boston to Los Angeles, a government source has confirmed that that was the second plane that went into one of the World Trade Towers in New York. I'm also being told by government sources, and again, these things change throughout the day, Peter, I want to caution people, but this is what we know now. A government source tells me that on American Airlines Flight 11, again, that was the flight from Boston to Los Angeles that went into the Trade Tower, that a flight attendant on that plane was apparently able to call the American Airlines Operations Center to tell them that two flight attendants had been stabbed and that the perpetrators had broken into the flight deck. We've also been told that a passenger aboard one of the United flights, United Flight 93, the one that crashed in Pennsylvania, a passenger on that flight was able to call 911 apparently and let them know that the plane was being hijacked. Again, this information from government sources, and we don't know if it will hold up throughout the day, but that's what we are being told at this time.
I very much appreciate you bringing us up to date. There's one thing that I'm never quite clear on yet, and that may be just because where I'm sitting. Do we know American Airlines Flight 11 from Boston to Los Angeles was a 767, is that correct?
Yes.
United Airlines 175, which went into the World Trade Center.
That was a 767
as well. The American aircraft plane, which we're a little uncertain about the crashing into the Pentagon, was it Boeing 757?
Correct.
And it was also a 757 that crashed near Johnstown.
Exactly.
So we have two very popular and very widely used and very important aircraft in these two airlines being used. Lisa, thanks very much indeed. On the phone from Washington with us now is the former Secretary of State, James Baker. Are you there, Mr. Baker?
I'm here, Peter.
So what would you do?
Well, it's a pretty tough one, Peter. It's everybody, of course, is in deep sorrow and shock. It seems to me that this is something we've been worried about for a long time. We've been able, fortunately, to foreclose it up to now. We may be entering a bit of a new era. We may have to do a bit more to preempt these types of events. We may need to get some better human intelligence to penetrate some of these groups before acts like this can be carried out. We may need to do even more to beef up. Obviously, I suppose we need to do even more to beef up our airport security. There's a lot along those lines, I think, that needs to be done, and mostly, I think, strengthen our intelligence capabilities.
You are the second person, second senior former government official to say to us today, to imply very clearly that human intelligence in those areas of the world which are to some extent breeding grounds of terrorism are plainly weak.
Well, they are weak, Peter. We went on a real witch hunt with our CIA back in the early mid-'70s. We had hearings. I won't mention the name of the legislator who conducted those hearings, but they, in effect, resulted in our eliminating a lot of our human intelligence capabilities. It's a dirty business. When you have human intelligence, you're doing business with the kinds of people that will commit these acts. Sometimes the first test of a human intelligence agent, the first test they send them out on is to go out and kill somebody. So it's pretty tough for America to get into that, and we got out of it. But it may be that we have to get into that kind of business.
Mr. Secretary, why don't you just name the legislator, because you're just going to cause more trouble for me to go to the file and look it up. Who held these hearings, and what's the point you're trying to make?
Well, they were the church committee hearings, and what I think we did as a consequence of those hearings was to, in effect, unilaterally disarm in terms of our intelligence capabilities. Now, we have the best, technological intelligence gathering operations and capabilities in the world, but we need this human intelligence to penetrate groups like the group that must have carried out these operations.
I have only a vague recollection of this, but I think the point you're making is that there are some forces, political and otherwise, in the United States, who believe that getting down and dirty with potential terrorists around the world is not something we should be doing, that we should do it all technically, therefore not put people at risk?
That's correct. That was the thinking, and that's pretty much the policy we followed since then, and I think we need to get back into the down and dirty business so we can penetrate these groups and hopefully prevent these types of things from happening in the future.
Mr. Baker, I don't want to get ahead of things, and I'm sure you do not either, but if there is, and as somebody said earlier, there are no good options out there at the moment. But do you believe that the United States is, if it finds out that a state is involved, going to have to go to war in an active way against that state?
Well, first of all, I don't believe we're going to find out that a state is involved. I cannot really, frankly, conceive of a state doing this. There could be, I suppose, some indirect assistance from a state or groups within a state, and I don't think that's going to be the case. But if it were the case, I think we need to do whatever we reasonably and responsibly can to protect the American people, whatever that involves.
Now, this is always the toughest question for somebody who has been in office but is not currently. How much easier is it to say what you do now that you're not in government? In other words, were you the Secretary of State in the Bush administration at the moment. Now, would you not feel rather constrained by modern circumstances as to what you could do?
Well, I don't know. I mean, frankly, Peter, we have some laws on our books that we ought to take a look at. One of them is simply a presidential executive order that says the United States doesn't go out and assassinate people. I think there was a very good reason behind that, but I dare say that you would have about 99%, if not 100% public support across the United States today if we found out that one terrorist group was responsible for these incidents. You would have 100% support almost for taking care of the person who leads that group.
One of the difficulties, of course, Mr. Baker, is that in a situation like this, we end up fighting like the terrorists to some extent, right?
Well, that is unfortunately the case. That's true, but it may be that that's the only way we can really take care of the problem. You know, the president said today, he made a statement I think was absolutely the right statement. He said America is under attack, under terrorist attack, and he said we are going to hunt down and punish those we find responsible for this. And that, to my way of thinking, means doing whatever is required.
Mr. Baker, thanks very much for the time.
Thank you.
James Baker, the former Secretary of State, also widely known in the country as the man who did as much as he did to win Florida for George Bush at the last presidential election, but a longtime member of the American political and foreign policy establishment, and who knows how complicated this is, and who makes a very open, you'll hear this a lot in the next few days, not enough human intelligence, and we'll review who that legislator was. Tony Cordesman, our military analyst. Are you listening to Mr. Baker? Is he making sense?
He is, Peter, but I think we need to have an important caution here. Human intelligence isn't as simple as it sounds. The actual agents can take years to develop. Historically, they've often been unreliable, and the more hostile the ideology is, the more uncertain the collection. Human intelligence is also analysis. Our analytic side is weak. The CIA has had hiring freezes. There is so little money for CIA and for DIA that most of the country analysts have never been to the countries they're actually analyzing, much less talked to many of the elements within them. And as Secretary Baker pointed out, if you're going to go into operations, that's different from human intelligence, and our operations capability has been allowed to decline for nearly a decade.
Thank you, Tony. The game has changed a good deal today, so let us get back. Yes, John.
Before Jerry Howard leaves us, and he's promised to come back, all of the discussions we've had raised the question to me, and I know Jerry's been more fully briefed on these national security agencies than matters than any of us have. How many of these attacks have we known about and been able to prevent? How many that we've heard about? How many that we haven't heard about? And have any of them been on this scale?
That's difficult to answer, John, because a lot of that material is classified. A lot of that is kept classified, but there clearly are a number of threats that occur in this country almost on a daily basis. Some of them are hoaxes. Some of them are credible. Some of them are quite credible. And the spectrum varies. And they've had, and some we've been very fortunate with, as we were right before the millennium with the
intrusion from Canada.
Yeah,
but that was one that was the work of an alert agent. How many have we actually prevented through intelligence, which is kind of what Mr. Woolsey and Mr. Baker have been talking about?
I'm not sure anybody has a good number on that. That's something that I think that would be difficult to put your finger on at this point. You know, and it'd be interesting to get that from the FBI. I'm not sure that I've ever heard a number on how many we've actually thwarted.
Have you ever picked up the phone in your emergency management center and had someone on the other end who said we're going to blow up something?
We actually did receive a number of threats.
What was it like?
We had some letters come in, and we turned them over to the FBI. By and large, we felt that the majority of them were hoaxes, but we relied on the FBI for their intelligence, for their analysis of threats. We relied on the police department intelligence division, and by and large, with the exception of one or two that were a little more credible than others. Most of them were pretty lame hoaxes.
I remember two of those that were quite serious. In 94 and 95, when I was with the police department, we received information from the FBI that there was going to be a truck bomb attack within 48 hours on the New York Stock Exchange. We responded by surrounding it literally with sanitation sand trucks and blocking the street, and eventually set up a cordon which has still not come down. The other was a planned attack on the Israeli mission to the United Nations, which has been surrounded by cement blocks, first with sand trucks, and ever since again.
Our thanks to Jerry Hauer, the former head of the New York Mayor's Office of Emergency Management and Operations, and as we said at the beginning, it's an office which is not operating in the place that Jerry Hauer set it up, which was right adjacent to the World Trade Center, and it has been blocked off, put out of commission in one way or another by the horrendous devastation which has occurred in that part of town today. And we don't want to lose sight of it for a second in all this discussion about intelligence and terrorism. So I want to go back to George Stephanopoulos, who's closer to the building than anybody else, and then Bill Blakemore. They are both watching the search and rescue operations, and both report now. George?
Well, Peter, we still don't know that it is a search and rescue operation yet. Just a little while ago, one of the volunteers who tried to go down there and help reported back and said when you actually got to the scene, and you see it behind me, that cloud of black smoke, when you actually got to the scene at the World Trade Center, what was most remarkable, what was most amazing, what was most horrifying is that basically nothing was happening. They couldn't go into the building and actually perform any real rescue operations. And he also described the scene very close to the World Trade Center, soot and silt up to his waist. He said it was hell. We have also talked to some firefighters who've gotten fairly close to the scene. They've now set up a special command center over here at Manhattan Borough Community College here on the west side where they're relieving